Either we take this to the next level or we stop doing it. Go big or go home. If Google tomorrow decides to say, well, we end the partner program,
that might end some careers.
We're filmmakers first and YouTubers second. What is a content creator? I hate that word.
Nino is a filmmaker who transformed a small forum for DSLR cameras into a leading publication for cinematography gear reviews. But not only that, CineD has become the de facto standard when it comes to sensor testing and is helping readers across the globe choose their next kit. I've personally been a fan of what they do since the early days in the 2010s, and the recent controversies about reviews killing companies was just a perfect opportunity for me to sit down with him and have a chat to get a perspective of somebody who built a business on putting company promises to the test. Hi, my name is Valentin, and if you take anything away from this conversation, it would be awesome if you could leave a comment down below. But for now, join me on this chat.
This feels like totally like weird. I'm used to like visit like YouTubers who have like their like home studio set up and like, yes, I have mics, I have a podcast set up, but this feels like so like, I don't know, real.
Well, we're filmmakers first and YouTubers second. That's the difference. We do this for a living, like we did this for a living for a long time before we actually decided to talk about it.
And that's actually like, you built this whole like CineD thing, like this cinematography gear review site that's like pretty well known in the industry, but you've been a filmmaker for the longest time. How did this all happen? And I don't know, what do you call yourself? Are you a content creator?
I hate that word. It's like, what is a content creator? You know, like what is content? Content, it sounds derogative of the stuff you're doing, and I don't think anybody should call themselves that, because what is content? It's like vague. You don't want to say. Even video creator is better, right?
Okay.
A writer would never say they are a content creator, but technically they are.
Yeah, everything is content.
Exactly. Like, and content sounds like a disposable kind of thing, right? Because in the age of stories that disappear and all those things that are non-permanent, the whole content thing sounds wrong to me. But no, we call ourselves filmmakers, I think.
Okay.
For sure.
And how did you build this whole CineD thing?
I studied in Salzburg and in England, and then I moved here, and I had no contacts, and I wanted to get into documentary filmmaking because I always had this interest in journalism in general, right? And then at the same time, there were these two other guys in Vienna who, you know, came from completely different backgrounds. My business partner Johnny now he always liked to work as a one-man band. Really small kit. That was his mission, always to reduce it as much as possible. And then there was our third business partner with the same thing. So, and that third business partner, Sebastian, he founded the original Cinema 5D, which was a forum for DSLR filmmakers. And basically that forum was to talk about all that and actually find accessories that work with it. And it was really a nascent industry that came out of this. And very quickly we realized actually we're all kind of doing the same thing in Vienna, just by accident. And then we realized, actually, we should put our heads together and do this together. And we can make something bigger. And that's what happened. So it grew a lot since then. And so that's kind of like the short story. It's something that was a side thing to our filming career became the main thing.
But was there always like a business thought behind it, or was it just like three guys hanging out having fun?
Originally, it honestly was just us finding solutions for our own shooting problems, right? With a forum and later the news site, of course, there's this community. And it wasn't just on the website. There was also, at the time, actually, Twitter was amazing. I mean, Twitter was really putting me in touch with so many people in the industry that I really became friends with. So, you know, like, there was like a whole community that wanted to learn about this kind of stuff. And it was really a great time, because there was this sense of community also from people that didn't want to work with the established tools. And the established tools at the time were really broadcast cameras.
That's right.
And in the film world, it was still shooting on film. And we all knew this is going away. It is going away. It's just a matter of time. And with that, of course, we at some point had to decide either we take this to the next level or we stop doing it, because, you know, go big or go home. Because there's no in between. Like, we can't do this, you know, like 2, 3, 4 articles per week. That's not enough, right? We have to take this seriously. We have to grow this in order to become a reputable source in the industry. just like the industry itself is growing. Yeah. So it automatically became a business.
And how much content is CineD putting out now? Like, what's the portfolio, so to speak?
It's very hard to say. I mean, we are publishing, or first of all, there's the 3 languages on the website. So there, it's English, it's Japanese, and it's Spanish.
Okay.
The English main version of the website, we post on average 5 articles per day, many of which are news articles. Then there's 2 or 3 reviews per week, and also 2 or 3 videos. Now with our regular podcast that we started 3 months ago, maybe that's an additional one every week. And in show times, like when in trade shows, like that's one of the things that people know CineD for. And then we produce a lot more. So we just, NAB just wrapped a couple of weeks ago, and we just published the last piece of content from there on YouTube. And I think we did 56 videos, not including the podcast, and then not including additional social media content, which we are now also fully embracing. So we were always, we see a lot of competing websites, and the problem is you see online that it's not so much our competitors, if you will. I mean, you're not really competitors because it's complementary. It's all complementary. Nobody who buys a camera just watches one review. They will always watch a lot of different ones. So that's completely fine. And it kind of, feeds each other. But when I say similar websites, there are not so many, but I think we're one of the few that always embraced also YouTube a lot as one of the main outlets, and much later also social media, because a lot of people who are now starting to do a similar thing than we do don't actually make a website anymore. They just make a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Like you.
Like I'm doing. Yeah. I was like, screw the website. I'm just going to go make videos on YouTube. And
yeah, that's fine. And YouTube has created this amazing creator economy where if you are successful, you can first of all get sponsors. That's the easiest way to get financing for it. And in the longer run, if you have a lot of views, of course, also the actual advertising revenue will make a difference. But in general, we like not to be dependent on a third company, right? Because in the end, if you
meaning YouTube
or whatever it is, because in the end, you always put all your eggs in one basket. If Google tomorrow decides to say, well, we end the partner program, that's,
that might end some careers.
Exactly. They can't do that with our website, right? So, but at the same time, you have a lot of, from the younger generation who don't actually surf to normal websites anymore. So they get their information from social media specifically and YouTube. And I specifically don't include YouTube in social media, although I know a lot of people do. I don't think it is social media.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, it's not social media per se.
There's no direct messaging. There is
no... Yeah, because I don't...
There's not much social aspect to it.
Exactly. I don't understand this mixture. But anyway, so we only, maybe this year or the year before, we always had a lot of... what was posted about our new articles on Facebook, Instagram, and so on. But only this year we were fully also embracing the Reels, which for a long time we kind of didn't. And now we're doing real cut downs of basically all our content, which again, supposed to help the main content on YouTube. But even if it doesn't, it's more eyeballs on some of the core messages, shortened versions of the reviews, of the interviews, of the podcasts. You just have to be there.
Yeah. It's fascinating because you've been doing this for so long and you've kind of grown into this business with a journalistic perspective, with having really good relationships with all the companies. And now recently, a lot of YouTubers are discovering this topic of responsibility. Can you just say whatever you want? Can you just trash a product if you want to? What is your whole perspective on reviews and how to communicate with brands?
It's always a fine line, right? So, for example, we get exposed to a lot of products. We get exposed to a lot of products before they're released. Then we test them. And if there are issues with a product, it's very easy to go online and bash them, basically. I have the biggest respect of MKBHD. I think his reviews are amazing. Are also very well balanced.
I think so too.
And I think that's the reason why he's so successful. He's a very good explainer. So that's great. However, I don't think, the titling of some of those controversial reviews that he, or as his team published over the last few weeks or months are perfect. Like, I mean, of course, there's always, and we've been there before at a much smaller level, of course, but you can be clickbaity with a title, or you can be accurate with it. And just because the review ends up being balanced doesn't justify putting a title like "This is the worst product I've ever reviewed." That's.
Do you have any systems or guidelines to like? Are you just always headlining it or titling it like a matter of fact, or are you thinking about how can we get audience to pay attention to this?
I'm sure we could do a lot better with this. Like our thumbnails are a bit of a mess. They're kind of all over the place. The titles are probably a bit too standard, like a review of that and that, or blah, blah, blah. For sure. Yeah, that's definitely something that can be a lot of, like, we have to learn a lot here. But it's also partly because it's, like if you put it the same way, if it's just like Magic, Ursa, 17K review, whatever, it might be boring, but it's also not wrong. And
people know what they're getting.
Yeah, exactly. The people are knowing what they're getting. But in the process of reviewing, if we encounter problems, we get in touch with the manufacturer.
Okay.
I don't think it's a good idea to just, like you discover something that's problematic, and it's difficult because there's time pressure, because you want to, for example, release on the embargo lift date of a product. But in most cases, they reply very quickly, and at least to have the statement, like I'm not getting in touch with them in order for them to change my opinion. They can't. I mean, like if that's what I got, unless they tell me I'm using it wrong, like maybe that can happen. Like, did you actually see that mode or whatever? Yeah. That can happen.
Did you forget to flip a switch?
Yeah, nobody of us reads an actual manual. So who does? You're like, well,
you just go on YouTube and watch a tutorial.
Well, you can't of an unreleased product. Difficult.
Yeah.
We're the ones who make the tutorials, so that's the problem.
That's right.
No, but you know what I mean? It's like you have a problem and you get in touch with them, and sometimes there is like an unsatisfying answer, but then there is at least an answer that we can include, at least in the written part of the review.
Yeah.
And we can say, well, we reached out to that company and this is what they said about it. And then, like we're in the clear. Like I don't have a bad conscience talking about it because I'm least sure that that's the way, like I tested it in the right way.
And is that part of how you've been able to build these like really strong relationships with companies?
Absolutely. I mean, like we often know the people behind the products because we go to all those trade shows. We have a lot of meetings about upcoming or release products behind the scenes with manufacturers where we simply give feedback and our opinion. And we can't talk about those things because otherwise we wouldn't have them. And I'm sure that's the truth also for a lot of other reviewers. And I know it is because we are in a lot of those press events where the others are there. The goal is really to be able to get a better product next time, or, like that they enhance the things that we don't like, that our readers don't like, and we just give the feedback. We very often act as an intermediary between the audience and the manufacturers. And
so do you feel like you have more responsibility towards the audience or more responsibility towards the manufacturer?
No, of course the audience, because in the end we all want the same thing. We want a product that works for us as filmmakers. I mean, we don't have a responsibility there. It's like of course we have advertisers, if that's your question, right? Like, so of course there's always but we keep those things completely separate, right?
Yeah.
And of course that's led to discussions behind the scenes before, like you have a advertiser that actually advertises on your website, and then you review a product of those and they don't like some of the results, but it's like, well, that's how it is, right? Usually I have to say, and I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna go into stereotypes here, but there are companies and it might be a cultural thing from some cultures that they kind of expect to be able to almost buy an opinion. Okay. And that's the incredibly sad thing about this whole influencer economy, that's literally what they do.
Right.
You have so many people on Instagram and TikTok that are just, many of them are disclosing it, but many are not. And then a young creator you can buy with free gear, right? It's like basically, here's my new whatever.
It's like extra Christmas.
Just
Here's
make something nice about it, and then say it's the best thing in the world. And it's like, we don't care about this stuff, Like, I mean, I can keep the lights on with the 700th new tripod, whatever. Like, it's pointless. It's really pointless.
Yeah.
And anything we get to review, even if sometimes they, like the less expensive stuff, if they don't want it back, because sometimes they actually have to pay import tax if you ship it back to their country. We never consider it ours. It's always a loaner.
Mm-hmm.
And in most cases, actually, at some point they will ask back for that. Like if a new generation comes out or whatever. But it's not something, like we consider, and we honestly don't care. And that will never influence our opinion. And actually, most of the established companies know this, because that's, and like I'm sure MKBHD Marquez operates in the same way. Otherwise, we wouldn't have become that successful. You can, like you have to serve your audience, but that doesn't mean you can't be an interface to the manufacturers, and you don't have to bash a product, even if it's bad. You can say, well, actually that didn't work for us, or it doesn't make sense, or whatever. But we find, like I've never really seen a manufacturer that intentionally makes a bad product. They all genuinely want to make a good product because they want to sell it, and they know industry is small, word travels fast. If something is really bad, it will simply disappear.
So, but you mentioned these influencers, these people who are just getting offered free equipment to do a review or something. Do you have any advice for them how they can build relationship with companies?
Well, first of all, I think it's fine if you take the free gear, that there's no problem with that. You just need to disclose it. Like you have to, actually legally you have to. A lot of them are not doing that. Like even if it doesn't matter if it's free gear or if you get actually paid for that. I think there's so many ways to expose the functionality of equipment that's not a review. Just use it. That's some of the best YouTube or Instagram channels that I know are just actually showcasing how something is used, and are doing that in a great way. For example, even if I have just 1 minute of footage and I see a couple shots of, that's actually a talented filmmaker using a lens. And now I see what it looks like. Just be honest about the relationship. I don't think it's a problem. There is no reason to not be honest about that. I think you shouldn't say this is the best whatever in this category. If you're paid by them or something like that,
I guess a lot of people are just kind of stuck in that area where they just like, here's equipment and they're being asked to do a review, but then they can't make that step up to become a Marquez, become a Nino,
They get offered money at some point, but the problem is, and I see that a lot of all this YouTube stuff is very personal, so people like to see people.
Yeah.
We've very early decided that yes, it's often Johnny or me or some others in front of the camera, but even at the expense of reach on YouTube and so on, we decided that we want to put our brand CineD first and not us personally, because at some point you will burn out if you do that. And you see that with so many YouTubers that are quitting, because even if they become big and they kind of manage to do everything themselves, it's not sustainable at some point even more. And it doesn't even matter how much money you make, because you still have to do everything yourself. And some people just don't manage to, build a team around it. And there's very few that you have to, because otherwise you cannot do this 24/7. I mean, like we started this, 16, 17 years ago. You're a different person, you have a family now. It's like different things. I don't want to do this 24/7. You will, it's normal to want to do this 24/7 when you're in your mid-20s or whatever, but things are changing. And if you want to maintain this, you just have to think a bit more entrepreneurial. And that's what a lot of people, I don't think, are good at. It's,
with the whole CineD brand, the faces can change. Anybody can be
That's
right
the
for
idea.
it's like a newspaper or a magazine.
Yeah, I mean, it is more personal, I guess, because people, of course, kind of expect us sometimes.
It's
but
the
it's
trend in the media. Even like a Vox has like presenters who are known for their personality.
Yeah, that was the idea to kind of build the brand first, and person second.
And how do you bring people into this team, in this organization? What makes somebody a good fit? How did you go from three people having fun to like, I don't know, what did you say? How many people do you have now?
It's very hard to say because, of course, we have a lot of people freelancing for the site and writing for the site. So most of the writing team are not here.
Okay.
They're all professional filmmakers scattered all around the globe and doing this on the side because we want people to be active in the filmmaking world when they write about stuff. Because we noticed a long time ago actually, we don't want to really work with professional writers because even though a lot of them used to be filmmakers or used to be in the broadcast industry or whatever, you're losing touch. You see it in the writing that it's like person hasn't actually touched anything from that. We always encourage the team to put in their personal perspective, even in a news post. Like if there's a new gimbal from DJI, I will try to assign this to one of the team members who I know works a lot with DJI gimbals. Obvious.
So they know the basic functions, they know how it compares to the other models.
But that also means we need a big team because none of the writing team are doing this full time. So we need a big team. And I think right now it's like 13, 14 people writing for the site, but at completely different levels. Some are writing 20 plus articles per month, some are writing 2. And it just depends. Yeah, that's really, if somebody's on a shoot for a longer project and they are just gone for a couple of weeks.
And how do you become part of your team? Do you have like every once in a while you just hire people or do you meet people?
It's a bit of both. I mean, we actually do calls for writers on the website like maybe once a year.
Oh, really?
And then we get a lot of applications. We go through them and we talk to them and, explain how it works and so on. And if you're longer part of the team, we actually, the ones that really stick out, we decide to invite them to come with us to the trade shows, to shoot with us, to be editor-in-chief for that time, to be a video editor, whatever we need. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Do you care more about them having like a filmmaking opinion experience versus the writing experience, or does both have to be on like an equal level?
Yeah, that's a good question. We, the filmmaking experience is definitely more important because the writing they can learn.
Okay.
But of course, I mean, there needs to be good English and a decent ability to write, although everything is being proofread by native speakers. So it's not like everything is actually going through a couple cycles before it's published. And so it's not a requirement to be a native English speaker because, I mean, very few of us are.
Yeah. And you also said the site exists in Spanish and in Japanese.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So in 2016, we decided that, was it 16 or 15? We decided that we should also launch the site in Japanese because Johnny, who spends a lot of time in Japan and also, has a great affinity to the culture and always, does a lot of meetings with the manufacturers there and so on. He said, it's funny in Japan, it's a country of 60 million people. It's most people who speak Japanese are in Japan. So it's not like with some others languages where they're really scattered around the globe. And there's very few outlets that have our type of content in the Japanese language. So we decided to give this a go. We already have the content. Find a team that actually translates the content into Japanese. And almost from the get-go, it was very popular because we saw the traffic from Japan on the English website. So they probably auto-translated. And then when we decided to translate everything to Japanese, not everything, but a lot of it or most of it, then we saw, it was very popular immediately. And now around 20% of our total traffic is from Japan, which is kind of amazing. So we are kind of big in Japan, which is funny. So yeah, like they recognize Johnny when he walks around there on those trade shows as well.
Really?
And Spanish was just an experiment that also was started a couple years later, which it's going okay. It's not as big as in Japan. The bigger difficulty is that it's
It's all over the world.
it's scattered, and that makes it hard for us to actually find a financial way of financing that team, because if you have a sponsor from Spain, they like much of the audience might come from South America or wherever, and then it's very difficult. It's because actually people from South America order from B&H very often, and so that's just
But so in that context, how does CineD make its money? Because a lot of media businesses or traditional media businesses are struggling, keeping the lights on, are downsizing. You seem to be doing pretty well, and are in this middle ground between. I'm still going to say the word content creator and journalists. How does this operation function?
Well, the core it's a couple of different things. It's a mixture, and it's mostly three or four different avenues. Traditional banner advertising on the website, believe it or not, is still important.
Okay.
We always give packages to manufacturers that don't only include banner advertising, but also some other sponsored content. We, for example, also have this in the spotlight category. That's right now Fujifilm and Canon are sponsoring. So, and that's highlighting content creators or filmmakers that are actually using their cameras. And it's really an educational piece, and you're just highlighting people that make cool stuff with their cameras. And Fujifilm and Canon actually, sponsored this section to have that. That's open for other manufacturers as well. That kind of traditional, like banner stuff, sponsorship is one thing. The other thing is, of course, affiliate advertising. Our main retail sponsors are B&H and CVP.
Yeah.
We get a tiny commission from every sale. So if people
But if
click,
it's a big camera, it's a bigger commission.
it's 3%. It's nothing major, but still it helps, and it doesn't cost anybody anything more if they buy through those links. So it always helps us, of course. And that's why we have buy links on every article, basically. And we decided to team up with the biggest in the industry simply because for us it's important that they have as much as possible of the stuff that we report about. And the third thing is those two companies like B&H and CVP, they also sponsor our review coverage. So we get a compensation for the video views as well, which helps to motivate us to make more video content, more successful video content. Yeah.
Any plans of making your own products at some point?
Yes, we have plans to make our own products. We are very careful with that because, of course, we don't want to, compete with. It doesn't make sense to compete with any of the big ones. And
I don't think you're gonna make a camera anytime
exactly
soon.
yeah, like a camera or anything. It will always be like a niche kind of thing, or something that adds something extra that we haven't seen from anybody else basically before. Or if we get a super great deal for our audience. For example, we're gonna launch these little CF Express Type B cards that are made in cooperation with Angelbird. They have the CineD logo on it, and the advantage is they are the same cards they sell, but we have a code that people get them €100 or dollars cheaper. And that's a pretty good deal, I think.
That definitely is.
Yeah, so and we're gonna promote that through the site. Maybe it's already out there once you publish this.
I'll definitely put a link down to whatever's relevant. What does success then mean to you? You've been in this for a long time. I'm sure you've had probably a lot of interesting experiences, probably more interesting experience ahead of you. What does success mean to you?
I don't know. Success means for me that I can go to bed at night and be happy about what happened that day. And it doesn't matter if it's, my son learning to ride his bicycle, or if I was happy about what we did here. I don't know. It's like, of course, it's always good to have some long-term plans, but I think it's a good idea not to be too hung up about things, because things are changing constantly. I think you have to accept as you get older, you're like, okay, well, actually, maybe I have to adjust that goal a little bit, But maybe that's fine, you know.
I'll try to keep that in mind.
I don't know if it makes sense.
I think it does. And when we think back to this influencer, content creator, YouTuber who like, I don't know, somebody who wants to make the first step to like make online videos, but doesn't quite have the guts to do that yet, what would you tell them? What's the first step they should take?
I think it's just important to make something that you really enjoy doing. I mean, it sounds very, everybody's telling you that, but it's so true. Because if you have any doubts about, you know, like don't bend yourself into something you're not. Because even if you might be able to do that for some time, you will not be able to sustain that. And if you know what you want, pursue it with all your heart. I mean, that's the only thing the only advice I can give. Because so many people actually right now, I have a feeling that the younger generation has a much more trouble actually sometimes finding, because of all the potential choices they have, they get so confused on what they actually want to end up doing. But if you know, and if you found it, just, you know, like cling to it, like, you know, like put everything in it, and don't think about the money in the beginning. You just don't, because it's going to come anyway, right? It's like, I think if you put your heart behind the one thing you love, I think you will be successful, and then the money will also come. It's never the other way around. It's like, I've seen all the people who've made choices because of the money. They always they stop doing it at some point because they they completely get burned out and depressed.
Mm-hmm. I got one last question to you, and that's, I feel like I have to ask you this. Like, what's the best camera?
The best camera is always the one you have with you. So the best camera right now is my iPhone 15 Pro Max. No, honestly, it's like comparing apples and oranges. It's like everybody has their personal preferences, and it would have been easier for me to answer that question 5 or 8 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
But when the differences between cameras were much bigger. I'm happy that we are expanding CineD in different areas, because the pure camera testing between us is getting boring as hell. It's like this, you know, they are all so good.
You can't buy a bad camera anymore.
You kind of, yeah, that's kind of what it is. It's it used to be night and day sometimes.
Yeah.
You know, there were leaps, there were revolutions in some areas, and now the level is so high that we talk about negligible differences, even between entry level cameras or mirrorless cameras versus the high end cinema cameras. That's something to consider. So I would recommend, if you are starting out and you want a good camera setup, spend your money on glass and buy a cheap camera. The camera is going to be obsolete in 2 years, 3 years. The glass you can stick with forever. I mean, some of the lenses we have here are 15, 20 years older, and are still used every day. Whereas the cameras that are 10, 15 years old, they are long gone. Well, they might be still here, but they're gathering dust.
Awesome, dude. Thank you. This was fun. I learned a lot, and
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Of course.